Hi, Kapil sir, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hi,
I can hear you. Yeah, is it okay now?
Sir, can you pull down your laptop screen towards yourself? Can you pull it like up? So,
So just tilt it towards you, sir. Front tilt it so that it just comes. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
so possible to push it a little bit far from you, थोड़ा सा. So can you put some books beneath your laptop?
I already put. To go down. Go up.
Go up, go up.
Okay, sir. Sir, see, there's a where there's a mute option, there's a start cam, and there's a camera/mic. So please click on the third option.
Okay.
You will see one window has come, right?
Yes.
Now, see below camera, there's a show advanced options.
I want to change my resolution.
Yes, full high definition 1080p.
Okay. Done.
All right. So, Manisha, whenever you are ready, I will begin with the streaming plates. Okay.
I'm good, Pubali. We can start.
All right. I'm taking everybody backstage first.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Commodity Ki Pathshala, brought to you by NCDX and organized by Moneycontrol. We are here to decode the Union Budget 2022. The Budget 2022 actually gave a special emphasis on agriculture sector. If you look at the buzzwords, they were perhaps natural farming, technology, drones, emphasis on PPP actually just came back yet again. And then oil seeds, logistics, and much more is what we heard from the finance minister yet again this time around. What does it really mean for the sector, for the rural economy and agriculture and the farmers and the commodity prices is what we will try and decode with our guests. Joining me on this webinar is Mr. Kapil Dev. He is CBO NCDEX. I also have with me Mr. Ajay Kakra, who is Executive Director, Agriculture and Natural Resource, PwC. We also have with us Mr. Vipin Gupta, who's VP IVPA. Gentlemen, hi, thank you so much for joining us today. First of all,
Thank you.
I would want to come to each of you for your initial comments on what did you pick up from this budget when it comes to specifically agriculture sector. Kapil, I'll start with you. What was the high points for you? Kapil, what did you catch in the budget for what were the key points that you would want to talk about? Okay, we're still trying to get Kapil back on there, but Ajay, let's start with you then. What are you watching out for? What is the thing that jumped up to you from the budget?
Yeah, so one of the high points of the budget in the agriculture sector was the emphasis on the startups and the digital ecosystem which was given. So that was a really good thing because agri sector has been seeing a lots and lots of startups coming up, both upstream as well as downstream. The second point that I had a good point for the budget was they had some emphasis on the R&D and extension. So the PPP that we were talking, it is being focused on the R&D as well as the extension part, which is something like a laggard in the agriculture sector. So these are the two major points which I believe that were the high points for the budget.
Vipin, what is your sense? Well, of course, technology and IT were major thrust points in agriculture.
Yeah, exactly. There were I was coming, Manisha. I think a lot of emphasis on technology. So it's a very forward-looking budget in terms of agriculture. You're not talking about classical subsidies. You're talking about more and more technology being used, whether it's form of drones, natural farming, or improvement of agriculture syllabus, which will eventually benefit the farming community. From the edible oil sector, I do see mention of special emphasis on reducing imported oil dependence. I think that's a very welcome step, especially coming on the top of National Palm Oil Mission, which was launched last year. I think from my sector, I think we are very bullish about the agriculture economy. In terms of prices, I think we'll discuss later, but to me, it's a budget which is for farmer. It's a very, very forward-looking budget in terms of the intent that it conveys.
Hmm. Ajay, would you say that while much of the budget talked about longer term goals, structural changes, money allocations, etc., it did not perhaps have too much when it comes to the immediate respite that the sector perhaps is looking at?
Yeah, I would tend to agree a little bit on that part. There were a lot of expectations from the industry on the immediate action points, which probably were not there highlighting out in the budget. But if you look at even the structural changes, that's also something which is going to bring out a lot of efficiencies. I mean, maybe it is multimodal hubs which is being developed. Agri sector is also going to get impacted, and maybe irrigation like things for the cane betwa the plan which they are having. So that's something which is going to bring a lot of impact to the agriculture sector. But yes, on the in the shorter side, maybe the drones part would actually pick it up because it's already there in the market. It's already there. The technology is already there. So I think with this floodgates opening, we can see a lot of action in the drone segment or the related aspect to it, which is like the land surveying part of it, spraying of pesticide or other related aspect of it.
Hmm. When it comes about technology, Ajay, the budget also spoke about weather sensing, analytics, enhancing education and training, which you said was a major big point for you there, and then digital connectivity. Well, of course, we do understand that much of tier two, tier three, even the rural areas have good, strong digital connectivity there. But how much of that is being used in within agriculture? Would you say a lot more allocation and a lot more hand holding perhaps is what the farmers would need via FPO or directly?
Yeah, that's right. So while we are having a good penetration of the digital tools or the telephones and other services, when it comes to the agriculture sector, it requires a little bit of education on the part of farmers. Also, it requires what is required is that we have the proper data for doing the analytics. Agri sector, one of the major gaps is on the data, the quality of data that you get. Now, if we do not get the right data, you really cannot do the right analytics. I mean, insurance is a typical example for that. We've been trying for that. So once the data streamlining happens and the quality data cleaning and the data quality improves, then probably the analytics and the output will also improve. So I would say that it would require infrastructure. It would also require data capabilities, data capturing capabilities, and analytics around that. And obviously, from an extension and from a farmer's point of view, it would be more awareness and adoption by the farmers. Adoption also, because a lot of farming community people, they are over the age of 35, 40. So for them, adoption becomes a big thing. We need to also invest time and money into it so that adoption happens faster.
Well, money, time, and longer term goals is what we are looking at. And the point being, perhaps, that we have seen extension of schemes from previous budgets. That was a big plus into this budget. And the other thing clearly is going to be about on what kind of allocations and implementation that we see on ground. Kapil, I see we have you back with us. I was asking our other panelists on what are the key highlights that impact you or you think are the right or tick the right boxes within budget. What's your initial comment on that?
Thank you, Manisha. This budget is a little different from usually what we do see, especially for agriculture. And traditionally, the maximum amount, allocation goes to a few heads, which like food subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, price stabilization. But this time we have seen, a sharp decrease. Allocation is quite low, like 31% low for FCI, and then 23% less for under food grain procurement. And even Mahatma Gandhi employment scheme, 26% down. Urea subsidy is down, right? And the petroleum subsidy is down. And focus has been given to other some bit of a new technology, infrastructure technology going forward. The way agriculture need to shape up, like drone technology, right? Kisan Sampada Yojana, agro processing clusters, cold chain, etc. So I think that is something which government is looking now, and the traditional approach, allocating more towards subsidies on food and fertilizer. They are focusing on efficient technology, digitalization, infrastructure development, and maybe the cost reduction on the farming side by bringing a lot of efficiency. So I think in that way it is little different. The only miss which we do see is the marketing side has not been covered in any way, though formation of FPOs and infrastructure fund is still available there. But the last budget we saw a lot of things happening on the marketing side. Laws and a lot of discussion has happened, and now agri laws being repealed, it was expected that something on the marketing side will be covered in the budget to address some of the issues which were supposed to be addressed by those laws. So that is a miss. ENAM, of course, it's there, fund will be allocated, but not focus how to take it to the next level is still a miss. And the marketing efficiencies and connecting one nation, one market, open market, something is which should be part of that, but is not. So that is how I do see the budget, Manisha.
And while, of course, the government has a target on FPOs as well, the support continues. But again, there were a bit of a details that, as you mentioned, a lot of those points in the list that we actually saw a bit of a miss on. This one is to you, Vipin, and you said that oil seeds is something that jumped out at you from the budget this time around. And the finance minister spoke quite in detail about it during the budget and in her after budget interviews as well,
Yeah.
on how we need to be self-sufficient when it comes to oil seeds. While we are a way away from that, but with the kind of mention that we've seen, whether it has been about the national oil mission, etc., how have you read that? And on ground, when do you see that taking off actually?
Uh, okay, Manisha, I think, as you said, we are far away from self-sufficiency, but as long as we are reducing our dependence, I think that's the spirit that we should see the budget. To me, we see allocation of 7 lakh crores for grains procurement of MSP. I think if we want farmers to move from grains to oilseeds, we need to keep some provision for MSP support for oilseeds as well. Looking at the condition this year, we may not require that, but in terms of giving that comfort to the farmer that government will support at MSP for oilseed, I think that provision is something which we were expecting as the industry. That's missing. Also from industries side, we see a lot of emphasis on oil seeds. But when you are developing oil seeds, you need to take care of industry. And you are aware there is an anomaly today. You can get your finished product, the refined oil, at a cheaper price than the crude oil because of the export duty differential that exists at the origin. We, as an industry, we were expecting some correction over there, which has not happened. But probably it's not happened as part of a budget, but eventually it has to be taken care of, and otherwise industries won't survive, and whatever dream we have of reducing oil import dependency, that will not happen. But nevertheless, a very uh, healthy sign of finance minister in her budget speech covering special mission on edible oil, and on top of the national palm oil mission which prime minister announced last year. I think this is a very, very positive step, and I'm sure this industry will grow from here. But these are some nagging issues of the industry which needs to be taken care of. But once they're taken care of, and second is government needs to ensure that farmers get the price. We have seen how production has jumped for oil seeds in form of soybean and mustard because of the price response. But we need to ensure farmer gets the right price. Fortunately, it's not very difficult for government here to maintain the price table because they have the lever of import duties in their hand. So they have to play around it very, very judiciously to ensure this production trend continues. I think that's the main thing from edible oil sector for us.
Vipin, you rightly mentioned about the procurement and the MSP part there, and I want to take this question to you, Ajay, because when we look at and finance minister actually started her speech with the saying on what kind of procurement the government has done when it comes to wheat and paddy and the kind of MSPs that is going out to the farmers. But then yet again, even after all these years, the emphasis just about continues on wheat and paddy. Do you see it changing anytime soon, and what really needs to change here?
So, if you look at the production side of it, wheat and paddy still continues to be the number one. You know, what we need to do is there has been a lot of effort by the government in order to look at crop diversification from high water consuming crops to the ones which are more sustainable on the environment, which may be say maize, or it may be other crops like gram. So all those crops are particularly important from a nutritional point of view. And I think there are 22 crops which are there in the MSP. It's not only wheat and paddy. So while we are supporting the farmers, we also need to support them for growing these crops. But the price parity, the market price which they receive for per acre of land of output from these crops, that needs to be justified. So someone who is shifting from say paddy to a maize needs to have a kind of a equivalent or remunerative kind of a return from those crops. The other thing that I believe is that I mean the system for procurement for wheat paddy is the most robust, and probably everyone knows it. All the farmers knows it very well. But for the other crops, if they are actually planning to have more crops into it, then those things needs to be refined a little bit. Another part would be that from my side would be that some emphasis on nutrition should be there, so that people actually start focusing on the nutrient part of it, so that there is a shift from high water consuming crops to a low water consuming crops, and the market should be actually able to provide that remunerative prices for them. So that's what I believe. It will continue as of now on the wheat and paddy part, but slowly we can see a gradual change happening.
Fair point that. And I want to come on to the sore point now, and that was about suspending various agriculture commodities. And Vipin, let's start with you on that. And even as we've seen the oilseed prices continue to surge up, we won't talk about the prices here, but the kind of volatility that we have seen, even as government has, or rather the regulator here has suspended futures. We've seen import duties go down. We've seen a lot of import come into the market as well as compared to last year. This year, not the quantum, but the value of this import has gone up quite high. And we still don't have a mechanism where you can go and hedge this. We're looking at a very strong mustard crop, so the prices there could come down. We're looking at palm oil prices at all-time highs, up nearly 18 to 20% already in this year in sense of many of those oil seeds. How do you look at on one side,
Okay.
we wanting to look at enough production and bringing down prices, but no mechanism. What sense do you make of that puzzle?
Okay. I think Manisha, first to put out the point that various studies globally, as well as the study conducted in India by IIT Kharagpur, they've clearly demonstrated that it's not the commodity exchanges which cause the volatility of prices to go up. They're the mere indicator or the messengers. They're the mirror where you see where the prices are. In absence of hedging mechanism, I think it's very difficult now for the entire chain to function smoothly. Especially if you look at mustard seed, farmer is currently looking at a price of 7,000 plus on in physical market, but there's no way he can lock onto these prices. If you ask a choice for the farmer whether he wants to lock these prices, yes, for sure he would like to lock these prices. But today, does he have the ability? No. So as industry, even I'm saying from the point of view of farmer, it was a very very important hedging tool, and we would still urge government to consider starting these hedging mechanism. They're very very important for a vibrant market to flourish. uh, in absence of any hedging mechanism, you don't it doesn't lead to a better price discovery either for spot or for future. So these tools are must have. And whatever progress trade has made over last 10-15 years because of ability to hedge, the large import chain that we maintain, we were able to maintain because we had the hedge, we had the view on forward pricing basis what exchange was telling us. I think it's imperative that they are brought back. That's the request we have been making. Even many farmers bodies have come across making this request. I think SEBI should definitely consider this request, especially when we see high mustard crop coming in month of March. All the tools that we have in terms of import duty reduction, they have already been exhausted, and this volatility will continue. We are seeing the Indonesian government making new rules on their export quotas, so this volatility will continue. This volatility can't be wished away.
Well, not really, because in all these years and after decades of oilseed prices staying in a range, this year, or rather 2021 is when it started, we've seen a huge amount of interest and price run as it was in oilseeds. Kapil, this one is to you. So, FPOs have been called as enablers and a support system or a mechanism when you look at farmers being represented. How have you read the budget in context to this?
Uh, um, I will cover it from the marketing side because that's what that side we do cover. We always talked about the transparency and the information availability to the farmer. The better decision making by using the information they have. I think that's what we were trying to do when we were connecting all the dots, whether it's warehousing, whether it's E&W, or financing and the pricing. Pushing the FPO, of course, it's there. The fund definitely is not what it was. It has been reduced by 200 crore from 7 to 500 crore. But again, the point of the marketing has not been covered very well. While they are saying that the startups will have FPOs, NABARD will extend more fund, credit guarantee fund is there, and it will be further boosted up. But it's not saying how the marketing related issues is going to be resolved, right? If you do comparison in last 10 year, means 10 year from 2014 to 2021, the number of small farmers is now 87%, which was around 80%, and the income from the agri directly has been has reduced from 40% to 32%. So 32% of the agri incomes come, only 32% comes from the farming, and then rest. And while wages and salary has increased substantially, up to maybe around 47%. So there are certain changes which is happening. But nevertheless, if you see the growth which we have seen in the production, growth we have seen in the productivity, and various other technological development which is helping us will continue. Every year we are doing a record production of the grains. We are now quite active in the export market. We are this year high time wheat, sugar, of course, then paddy we are doing, and other commodities as well. But the problem is that with increasing cost, how we are going to sustain in the global market, and if production is more and more and more, how we are going to sustain with the higher prices even in the domestic market. So marketing need to be given a lot of emphasis. Government definitely in this budget has said a bit of that, the price stabilization and price support scheme both. The budget has been slashed by almost 50% altogether, from around 6,000 crore to 3,000 crore for both stabilization and price support. So there are some indication that government will intervene less, but how, it is not yet clear. And if it is not clear, I think then it's a question mark that what kind of decision shall be taken. So that is how do we see it. But yes, FPOs are going to be the driving tool, and they have to be focused more and more. Uh, the focus which is there as of now on the production side, I think the larger focus also need to be there on the production side and the marketing side. So that's what we have been focusing. But going the futures, suspension of futures creates problem and it stops the journey which we have started. But we will keep on pushing that.
Well, yes, we've had a long conversations from the edible oilseed industry as well in India and abroad, and everybody seems to be voicing just one thing, that it isn't really the most wise of decision that perhaps the government has taken. But moving on, and the another thing which Economic Survey also pointed out on is the commodity inflation, which the ministers have been talking as well. Ajay, what's your sense on that? Because it's not just one sector or two sectors. You look at grains, you look at maize, pulses, edible oils, even the non-essentials like perhaps a cotton and guar for that matter. We've seen a price rise across board. Some of this is India-centric. Much of this is globally imported into India. How are you looking at the kind of space we are in right now?
So from an inflationary factor, if you see, so the factor costs are actually becoming more and more important here. So I'll begin with labor. So with COVID coming in, the labor cost actually increased, and similarly the logistic cost was also increased. Then going to the input side of it, another factor cost which is impacting the agriculture sector very much. So agrochemical, which India was heavily dependent on the US imports or the China imports, so that actually got impacted. While these were all the factor costs, but if you look at the marketing cost, which Kapil was also looking at, our I mean, because of the increased logistics as well as storage costs, these marketing costs were also getting impacted. And I mean, there are other factors which would be like natural climatic factors, which are basically adding on to the inflationary cost, which is like the amount of production that we are happening, or the droughts or floods that is occurring around the country, which is actually having which is bringing the variation in the yields of the crops. So that's something which is also very important things that we need to look at. We can't really ignore the the climate resilient part of it, the climate change which is happening, and that's also something which is bringing down the productivity while no one is really aware of it. It is actually slowly bringing it down. The soil productivity is reducing in a lot of areas. So what we actually need to undo that thing is a strong emphasis on the R&D part of it, which the government has said in the budget this year, but that is a long way from what needs to be done. A lot of investment needs to be done for R&D for bringing out climate resilient varieties, which would be helpful for the farmers, which will also help to cultivate in areas which are say high salt areas or high acidic areas, which are currently lying fallow in the agriculture sector. So inflation, obviously, it is a very composite factor, but what I suggest or what I see is that due to some bit of R&D and some bit of climate resilience, it can actually be undone to a certain extent. And the rest of it is, I mean, all depending on the global prices, how the prices of the commodities are moving on. So my limited point would be that these are controllable factors which can be looked at. But yes, inflation is impacting the farming operations, and it is becoming unviable for smallholder or the marginal farmers. And the only thing how it can be done, how it can be undone is through R&D or through use of technology, which can help him get a higher productivity or reduce wastage through for the same piece of land.
Ajay, I have a follow-through question, and this is, taking away from what Kapil said, just making that point here that we have seen a cut perhaps in budget on various sectors. I mean, this time around, the allocation on various subcategories in agriculture actually has gone down. I understand your emphasis on R&D. With the kind of allocations that we've seen, do you actually see a lot of need fulfilled within the sector?
So there are certain areas which are really left out. I mean, I would say even not even marketing, but infrastructure is also not covered properly. We can have much more of infrastructure development to be done, which would support the agriculture sector. While technology, they have tried to cover it out, but there are other areas like export facilitation. From a trade perspective, there was nothing there in the budget, which would actually help facilitate the trade, whether it is domestic or if you're looking at export. I mean, if you see India, we are just, somewhere, I mean, a lot of commodities, there's only 1 to 2% of the global export which is happening. So that's where some bit of focus can be actually laid out. But this will actually look at improvement of quality right from the farm level to the up the value chain, and that needs to be invested when we are looking at quality improvement. Maybe if it is fruits and vegetables as a commodity, then those things needs to be invested right from the farm level. Even for other commodities, if you want to export, the farmer needs to be taught on the good agriculture practices, the gap which needs to be ingrained, and the rest of the value chain has to follow. There has to be a lot of traceability to be done in order to have a good robust export value chain. So I would say that these are the areas which are really being left out. But yes, we are looking at some bit of technology, some bit of other areas which can actually support it. But yes, there are specific areas which can be made more robust in terms of making our value chains strong.
All right. So, while export facilities, whether it was trade or marketing, we didn't hear much. But a lot of industry participants say that okay, we didn't get much, but not much got taken away. That's the kind of thing that we find solace in nowadays. But let me come to you, Vipin, and we did hear one sector which the finance minister spoke about, and this was the post-harvest value chain. What are the details that you're looking on that, and how much of facilitated is that going to be?
I think we were expecting much more on the post harvest technologies, whether it was on the infrastructure part or the logistics part. And as other participants have been saying, uh, it left a bit. Uh, you would feel that you could have done more over there, but I think major emphasis for this government was on the capital expenditure. So obviously you have to cut down somewhere. But if that capital expenditure is actually implemented well in terms of creating the infrastructure, whether it's for logistics hub we are talking about or for roads connectivities, so I think all those will help in an indirect way in developing agriculture output. So though we don't see is it a direct allocation, but in terms of rub-off effect of the capex that we are planning, I think it'll come. I mean that's the way we see. So it's not about what you're getting this year, but it is more about what's the trend we are seeing and what we want to, where we want to see ourselves in next 10 years. So I think you need to evaluate this budget from more from a long term view rather than seeing what each sector is getting in this very specific 1 year 2 year time horizon.
All right, if you say so. Kapil, let me come to you then. And, the conversation also has been about, and this has been going in for years. I mean, I remember talking about it for last some years on how an exchange platform can be made use of in various ways, not just trading or hedging or, people making use it of as a platform only for price viewing, but also as part of procurement. I mean, I understand that NCDX has had so many tie-ups with state governments. There has been a lot of work that has been done with FPOs, etc. What has the budget given to you in all of those, things that you do?
I would say, Manisha, that's a miss. So I would continue. What already being said. The R&D need to be focused, and we have only country like India, we have only 0.3% of agri GDP going into research, which is only 8,500 crore. If you go to in comparison to China or US, it's quite low. So that has to be seriously looked upon. On the marketing side, we always have been saying that the derivatives market offers solutions when we are talking about the prices. As we said, if there is no government support, and then Bipin is here, right, the export would have been a different what we are looking at this point of time. Sugar, either it's sugar export, wheat export being carried up by the FCI, and other exports. A lot of supports is being pushed by the government. But the point again come here: can we afford exporting wheat at 21, 22, 23, or 2500 rupees? Maybe not. But we are producing more and more wheat every year. So here question comes that how do we balance in the competitive prices and the consumer and the products and the producers both. So these three things need to be balanced out. Producers need to be protected, as Ajay said. Costs are increasing. There is inflation, but consumer also need to be protected. But we are also looking forward for higher export, and so we need to have the most competitive prices as well, because production is increasing anyways, at least in last 5-10 years what we have been seeing. So derivative market, of course, offer the solutions. Producers can lock the prices what they want. They can decide basically what they want to grow basis what they are going to get after 4 or 5 months. All exporters, traders, and other value chain also can lock their prices and manage, right? We are talking about high prices of soybean, we are talking high prices of other commodities, but at one point of time when season started, there was prices which were not high actually, right, and could have been managed in very systematically if we have a policies around hedge and risk management. So I think that is something which need to be definitely pushed again and again. Though we always discuss it, we go back again when we started, but again we will keep on pushing it that risk management is something which is going to help. Right, today only I was reading the coffee prices are at lifetime high, right? 80% kind of movement has happened. But Starbucks has said that we have been, hedging, and we are okay with these kind of price movement because we have a policy in place which is protecting us. So it is not something, which nobody knows, but somehow the consensus is not built the way it has to be, and this is what we keep on saying. So that is one. I think these market need to be seriously looked on, derivatives market for all the commodities, whether it's agri or non-agri, and how those can be used for price related issues, and how the sensitivity of prices can be brought down, by these way. Nobody talks about higher prices in currency because we have a market where it can be hedged, right? We never said that let's spend the currency and get rupees to 70 or 65. No, that is not this something we ever discussed, right? Because almost 90% people are using currency market for hedging. But here it's a different, I'm not using but I will blame it, right? So I'm not part of the ecosystem but I'll keep on blaming it. So I think that is something which, and somehow it becomes right because government acts on those requirements. So that is something which definitely should be here. Again, I'm saying the fund again, price stabilization and support both has gone down, right? It means government may not intervene on that level what they were doing in last 3 4 years. But then how will they do it? Will they use a systematic scientific market, a developed derivative market, or they will keep on coming with these kind of interventions which we have seen? That is a question mark which definitely we'll see going forward how we get answer of it.
Well, yes, there are more questions than we have answers right now. Vipin, this one is to you, as the couple said and alluded to as well, that we've seen input costs go up, we've seen MSP go up, we've seen prices go up, we've seen imported prices go up as well, and then export is a bit of a concern right now. How would you look at the agriculture as a space in 2022 in sense of prices? I'm not asking a price view, but are we going to continue to look at higher prices from here on as well?
For sure. Manisha answered in two parts, one on the supply side and one on the demand side. On the supply side, in on to 2021, I think India was blessed with a near perfect weather, but globally there were adverse weather events, whether it was Black Sea, whether it was South America, North America. So most of the producing region had seen adverse weather, and that's why we see this supply-led price increase, because supply was getting slightly constrained in all the major geographies except probably for India, and that's why probably India is able to export what they are doing today, whether it's wheat or sugar, because we were blessed with the near perfect weather. Globally, there was adverse weather, so that was a supply-led inflation on the commodity prices. Second was the demand-led inflation. Demand was there because of the easy money supply that we saw globally. So easy money, inflation rate high, interest rate being low, so obviously that money was flowing into commodity, whether those were ags or they were other commodities. On that front, I think there'll be we can see some bit of easing with interest rates going up in UK. We are talking about interest going up in US. So once that starts happening, so the demand-led inflation probably might come down, but the supply-led inflation will continue even in 2022. Specifically, if we talk of edible oil, the way all the governments are getting worried about it, unless we see changes in biodiesel mandates, I don't think we are looking at $500 $600 prices anytime soon. It's likely to remain at least in 4 digit. I don't see 3 digit coming too soon unless there is a major policy changes on the bio mandates.
One point that I want to bring forth, and Ajay, this one is to you. So there's one area that we heard a lot about, and we've spoken about it as well as IT and technology. So whether it was about agri techs or agri startups, is a major thrust that we heard this time around. For the longest time, agri did not see a lot of startups, but in the recent time, we have seen a lot of startups mushroom up here. So the kind of support that the finance minister has promised here, how would you read on that?
Yeah. So, it's not a one-time event. I would say the agri ecosystem has been developing for the last. I mean, I've been tracking it for last around 8-10 years, and last year we saw a good surge because that was also on the account of how much investment they have been able to garner, and a lot of I mean agri tech investment has happened for both for downstream as well as the upstream companies which are there in agri tech. So I see that, that's a very positive signal, and the government has reacted very well to this signal. Last year we had a lot of investment happening, and this year the government has reacted on that cue. uh, Maybe because this is actually showing a good sign of growth. Average growth for startups, which is say 3 to 4 years, it is going up steeply, and you can see unicorns coming out of this startup ecosystem, and that's where the government is also betting that okay, let's support the startups. These are going to become the MSMEs and maybe the larger corporates of the next 20-25 years, next 2-3 decades. So that's where I can see that it will be moving. And other thing is that again I'll come back to my original point of data part. Government also has been struggling with the data part for the last 5-7 years. Now that data thing needs to be improved and made more efficient. Until unless that is done, the entire ecosystem will get suppressed only. We will not be getting right set of data of the production side. We'll not be getting the right set of data for the analytics or the predictive analytics, how much yield is going to come, or how the markets are going to behave, or how we should be actually looking at the supply demand side of it. So the data part again can be improved through this, through investment in technology, and that's what I believe, that whether it is weather sensing or it is, in terms of demand capturing, this is going to be something which will be very helpful for the agri ecosystem in the coming years. And another factor that I see is that this will have a trickle effect. Now, if you see a lot of startups coming up, the conventional business are also going to take that path if it is successful. So what will happen is that the conventional companies that you see, a lot of them have already started doing it. Now they'll develop their own capabilities, either own or outsourced. It will take a different course for every one of them, but they will try to have more reliability on the data or all the digital tools which is coming up. So that's where I can see it heading. The adoption will be higher once successful example starts coming out. The adoption rate will constantly start increasing, and you can see more and more unicorns coming out of this startup ecosystem. While that will happen, the conventional business will also have a greater percentage of digital into it. So that's how I look at it, and I think this is a very right and a timely move by the government.
Okay, so there are some hits and there are some misses and there are some long-term targets that the government seems to have put right now. For the near term, of course, the market participants perhaps have been left under dry, is what we feel when you look at various immediate near-term concerns there. But with that, we'll try and wrap this conversation, and we have spoken about a whole host of issues here. I'll come to you first, Kapil. How would you look at the budget? What would you say was still left to be done in this budget, and you wish government would take note of it even outside the budget?
Of course, the first part remain, Manisha, is the marketing. Means integration of market, information, and access to the right information while decisions are being made. I think is something we still do not have a agri portal which talks about how much we are producing, how much we are consuming, how much we are carrying. We depend on USDA to tell us that what we have, at least to the larger stakeholders. And when that happens, we do not have right access. I think the question on the prices will keep on rising. So that is something which we need to seriously work on, and I don't think we need budget for that. With ENWR coming in, government pushing that all the financing has to be through ENWR. On the infrastructure side, they are working quite seriously. If they integrate all these information, we will have a very I think sophisticated portal talking about how much we have, how much we consume, how much we carry. And I think when this happens, then we will not be questioning the prices which we are discovering by on any of the platforms. So I think that is something. And third is, I think, The most important is the bringing efficiency on the post harvest system. I think we are the only country with this much of production having traditional, the way of storages, right? Otherwise, a lot of things has improved, and we cannot afford that kind of, cost when we are now thinking going globally on a larger platform with a larger size. So that is something which need to be focused on: improved warehousing, going to the modern technology, bulk, and other efficiency in the transport, that need to be definitely looked upon seriously, and that will definitely help, to be us more competitive globally and in the local market also. So I think that is something which we need to, that means government definitely need to focus on. And one more thing, though they have started in this budget, they have given indication in the rationalizing of subsidy. While the noble is intent, reaching to the small farmers and the poor people, but we are giving 2 rupees wheat at 2 rupees against the market price of a 20 rupees, means almost 18 rupees of subsidy. But to pass on that subsidy, maybe the cost is further 18 rupees, right? So that something is need to be looked on, that how we want to go into the PDS system, how we are going to streamline that, and maybe DBT is something on the food side should be think and should be now looked upon. And if that happens, a lot of efficiency automatically will come into the physical trade. So that is something, Manish, I think need to be looked upon from the marketing side.
Kapil, that was very well articulated all of that. To you now, Vipin, and we missed talking about the PM Gati Shakti program and also the Unified Logistics Interface platform. How much of a difference do you see that making to the sector, and what would your be final comments?
I think, Manisha, I'll pass those comments. Those are not my specialization. But if I
Yeah.
still talk about budget misses, I think something to promote value adding at the farm level. How can you uh, value add from the produce farmer is producing near to his farm rather than it going all the way to APMC. I know there has been all the long debate of whether APMCs, how should we manage, but I think there has to be some incentive for people to set up agro processing right in the midst of or as close to farm gate as possible. On MSP, I've been telling again, there should be some provision for support for oil seeds that will send the right direction to the oil seed sector. We see that intent being shown through the increase differential rate of increase on MSP between grain and oil seeds, but still some provision to participate on the oil seed sector when it goes below MSP, that was required. And the anomaly that I've been talking about in terms of raw material being cheaper, raw material being costlier than the finished good for edible oil. I think from our side, that was the main thing which got missed, and we still await details of what actually will go into oil seed mission or oil mission. I think that's something which we are eagerly waiting.
We're waiting for that too. Ajay, this one is to you. And even as you give your closing comments, there's a whole wave of the green wave, as we call it, and the energy transition and the biofuels, etc. And food is somewhere stuck in the middle of all of this. How do you look at that and your final comments?
So, from first, I'll answer the first part first. So, from a food angle, it's really at the midst of it. There is a lot of GHG emission which happens in the food industry. Even from an energy perspective, also some of the consumption levels are really high. So there is a lot of scope for, rationalizing it. There is a lot of scope for looking at more sustainable ways of producing food. We can improve our food systems. There has been a lot of work being done. But yes, that needs to be grounded in a proper way. It needs to be adopted in a faster way so that the entire sector is benefited by that. And that will happen only when we are able to do that. There's more of awareness, there's more of adoption. So this is how I believe that agri sector will be able to contribute to the energy as well as from sustainability perspective. The other part, my final comments on the entire discussion. So I believe that there are other areas that we need to look at. It may be, say, integration, industry, and trade. That would be really three areas which I would say. From a trade perspective, it would be more for facilitation of trade, whether it is export or domestic. if we are looking at FPOs, how they can actually have a fair and a better trade. From an industry perspective, the government needs to look at creation of pull from the industry. There are so many coalitions which actually value high quality produce, maybe a fair trade or sustainable trade kind of initiative. So those kind of things needs to be done. The other part is for the integration part. Now, integration means that there are multiple programs going on. Can we actually really look at integrating? There are different ministries, there are different departments, there are different organizations which are working up, and the benefit goes to the same producer entity. Now, can we really look at integrating those things? Whether it is irrigation plus soil plus processing, or it is say processing plus export or other things. So can we look at those kind of integration? Once those things happen, the industry will be benefited as well as the producer will be benefited. So this is my limited thing. And also last, from the quality perspective, we really do not have differentiation of quality when it comes to agri commodities or agri trades. It is not ubiquitous, although a lot of people do it. But why should a farmer who is producing a quality a grain should be paid equivalent to a kind of person who is selling a mixed grain? So that quality differentiation needs to be created. Once that happens, the farmer will stand to gain, and even the industry will also have a reduced cost for segregating the qualities and procurement cost, which they incur a lot onto. So this is my limited take from the discussion.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and putting those very valid points forth. Well, there have been some hits and a lot of misses as well when it comes to agriculture as a sector. But as you all said, that plenty can be done outside the budget as well. And there are some pressing needs that the agriculture as a sector needs right now. And we are hoping that the ministers, the regulators are absolutely listening to that. With that, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Kapil, Ajay, and Vipin, thank you so much.
Thank you.